Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
Hello and welcome to Getting to Know You. I'm your host, Robert Jaquay. On today's program, we're going to be talking with Blair Horner, who is the Special Advisor on Policy and Public Integrity to the New York State Attorney General, and Jim Aram, who is a high school fellow at Shaker for Democracy Matters. Let's go talk to them. Blair and Jim, I want to thank you for agreeing to be guests on my show today. Nice having you here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
Before we start talking about Project Sunlight and Democracy Matters, I'd like to give our viewers a bit of information about you both, your background, and how you got to where you are. So Blair, I'm going to start with you.
Well, I started working on state governmental issues back in 1979. I started with a group called NYPIRG, New York Public Interest Research Group, and I worked with them until last year. Last year, the Attorney General pitched this idea to me, which was to create this website that would allow New Yorkers to simultaneously search political databases. It's never been done anywhere in the country, and so I decided to take the leap. And so for the past year, I've been working on the development and ultimately execution of the website. But the history before that was advocacy work, really working with NYPIRG on environmental, consumer, good government types of issues.
And you were at the NYPIRG for quite a number of years.
Yeah, from 79 to
Right.
2007.
Right.
Sometimes when I say it like that, it's kind of mind-boggling that I was in one place for that long, but I was there for nearly 30 years.
Jim, what about you?
Well, currently I'm a senior at Shaker High School. Basically, I just want to be involved with the democratic process, so I learned about, I was working on, I believe Kirsten Gillibrand's campaign, congressional campaign back in 2006, and I learned about this exciting grassroots organization called Democracy Matters, which focuses on clean elections and campaign finance reform. And very interesting. I'm trying to bring it to the high school level, and I think I've achieved some success, I would say.
Well, I guess so. You brought it to my attention, so we're letting the people know about that as well. So I'm glad we can talk about this today. Let's start with Project Sunlight first, and just explain, what is Project Sunlight?
Well, Project Sunlight is a website, sunlightny.com, .org, .net. Sunlight.ny is really the key thing for your viewers. It's a government database offered by the New York State Attorney General that allows New Yorkers to do a couple of things. One is to simultaneously search databases, campaign finance, lobbying, state contracts, member items, legislation, to simultaneously search that data and find whatever it is they're looking for, if anything. The second thing is the site educates New Yorkers on how state government works, at least to some extent. It has embedded in the site videos that explain lobbying law or videos on the basics of state government so that people can get a better handle on state government proceedings. The theory is that the more that the public understands how Albany operates, the less likely they are to be cynical about it, and the more likely they are to participate. The more people participate, the better the policy making. So that's the underpinning of why we did it. But the actual service that we provide is pulling together disparate databases, making them work together so that New Yorkers can do whatever they want in terms of searching around. It's organized in a way that is really with an eye toward the average user. It's not a wonk site at all. There are pre-organized opportunities to search the databases, so you just kind of click your way through. Or you can do more sophisticated analyses if you want as well.
Were people, I mean, it must have come to the Attorney General's attention or to your attention that people were wanting this information. I mean, is that how it came about?
Well, I mean, the idea of the website was the Attorney General's idea when he was a candidate for office. He made the argument that Justice Brandeis made, which is sunlight is the best disinfectant. And his theory was, well, I'm going to add some sunlight to Albany, that he was going to make a major plank of reorganizing the Department of Law to add to it public integrity initiatives to go with the traditional things the Attorney General did in the area of consumer protection, environment, healthcare, whatever. So it was his idea. Now, when I was at NYPIRG, I had a whole series of projects where we were trying to open up government to public scrutiny. We had this kind of digital democracy vision that the power of the internet would give citizens unprecedented access to their own government. So the Attorney General makes the speech. I put out a press release saying it's a good idea. He gets elected, calls me on the phone, says, okay, now you can put your money where your mouth is.
You got a job.
Well,
you got a new job.
He makes the argument to me, which is very compelling. Look, you've made a whole career out of criticizing government. Here's an opportunity for you to put something together that will help the public understand it better. I want you to do it. So I said yes.
Now, a career on criticizing government. Why do we have to criticize our government? What's wrong with our government?
Well, I mean, this may sound, I don't mean this to sound cynical or anything, but the way the government is organized, particularly state government is organized, but it's true even at the federal level, I've done some congressional lobbying, is that you have systems where elected officials rely fundamentally on private donations to get elected to office. This is a kind of a Democracy Matters issue.
Okay.
And when you rely on on private dollars to get elected, who gives you the money? Well, the lion's share of it comes with people with business before government. And that creates inherent conflicts within the state government or the federal government itself. Now, you have to deal with that, but as a reformer, you have to deal with that. But elected officials are constantly balancing their political livelihood, and the reliance on private donations against the policy initiatives that those very groups want to see them advance.
Right.
And so it's very difficult. And so left to its own devices, government ends up being too secret. And when it's too secret, special interest groups flourish. And so our criticisms and our advancing of reform measures when I was at NYPIRG was to kind of break that down, get the public involved. The more the public got involved, we argued, the better the policy making, the more limitations that would be placed on special interest groups. So that was the reason for why we did it. Also, there are problems that need to be solved, and often those problems cannot be solved merely by allowing special interest groups to clash with each other. The public interest is not always served by the clash of special interests.
Right.
And so we would advance those measures and at the same time try to reform the system.
I mean, I've heard we have a new administration in the town of Colonie, and one of the cornerstones has been this platform of transparent government. And we're talking about transparency so that really people can like you say, put sunlight on something, open something up, and find out the real information. I mean, find out how much money someone is getting, find out what somebody is doing. Is that right?
I mean, the more you can do to open up government, the better. And there's the rhetoric of transparency often falls apart against the reality of governing.
Right.
Because when you're transparent about everything, sometimes it makes it harder to get things done. It's harder to negotiate in the open. It also often embarrasses your own agencies.
Right.
And so the longer institutions are in place, the less likely it is they really want to be open. So it's important for policymakers to argue that they want to be transparent, to advance measures of openness, but they have to do it. And where the rubber really hits the road is when they actually deliver on projects like Project Sunlight, where you can actually go somewhere and get information that you couldn't get before. I think local governments should look to what we've done on Project Sunlight as a model, because it's not only about making the information available, it's organizing the information in a way that the public can understand what they're looking at. You can make stuff available, but if you bury people in numbers, they don't get it. You also have to let the public know how the system works so that they can participate and they can understand what it is they're actually looking at.
What is the most likely scenario for somebody going to the website? I mean, just say I hate to use the word average citizen, but say a citizen. What would be the scenario?
The most likely time that I would see somebody using this is, well, there's really two. One would be they're reading the local newspaper and there's an issue that comes up in it and they want to know more. It's a state issue and they want to know more. They would go to the website. They could look to see if there's legislation regarding it. They could find out what groups lobbied on that bill. They could find out what legislators have introduced the bill or support it. They could find out whether or not those groups are making campaign contribution on the issue. I mean, so there's something that provokes their interest while they're reading the paper. The other is when they're trying to make the informed judgment of who to vote for.
Okay.
And that's coming up at the end of this year. The public will start to think about, who am I going to vote for? And this would be a useful place for them to go to take a look at some of that information in terms of what kind of bills is my elected official introduced? Do I agree with those bills? Who works on those bills? What do I think about that? And usually what will happen is, I hope, is that people read that information, have a more informed opinion, ask more pointed questions of the candidates before they go to the ballot box in November.
Now, are you also advocating that people, in their search for this information, eventually go to the candidate themselves? I mean, through their offices, legislative offices, or whatever it might be. When I was talking a little bit before, I was giving you the kind of the NYPIRG perspective of why it was that I was a critic. Yeah.
Now that I'm a public official, my job is not to tell the public what it is that they should do.
Okay.
Once they have the information, my job is to provide it. And then they do it as they wish. I hope that they use it when they're making important decisions. They may not, but that's their choice. Our job in government, I believe, is to make the information publicly available and in a way that is as useful as possible to the average New Yorker.
Okay. Well, maybe this is a good little segue to Democracy Matters, because really the idea is getting people involved in the democratic process, in all the things that affect them as far as government goes. So why don't we talk to Democracy Matters, Jim? And I'm going to ask you exactly what is Democracy Matters?
Well, Democracy Matters was started back in 2001 by Donald Foyle. He's currently a NBA player, and he plays for I believe,
He's the
Orlando.
Warriors, right?
Yeah,
Well, I don't know if he got
He
traded.
used to play for the Warriors,
Yeah.
but I believe he plays for the Orlando Magic currently. And basically, like I said before, it focuses on clean elections and campaign finance reform. It's mostly worried about getting private money out of politics.
Okay.
Specifically, it wants there to be a system, a public finance system, where instead of the candidates raising their own amounts of money, they will go to, the government will provide a set amount of money for them to use for campaigning, just campaigning in general. Now, in the current presidential election, I believe the highest percentage of money from, say, $200 to $300 range going to each candidate, that makes up about 25% of the highest. One candidate has about 25% of all his contributions come from about the general region from $200 to $300. Now, the rest of the money is coming from wealthier, much special interest groups and very wealthy people who have tremendous influence. They can donate up to $2,000 to $3,000, and like certain people may, even though there's I believe a limit as to how much a certain person can donate, they can get around it. They can get all their family members they give all their family members money, and they go out and give the money to the candidate. They give their friends money to get out to the candidate, and that's a lot of money. Now, let me do an analogy right here. Now, let's say Mr. Horner gave you $100, and say I gave you 10, and we both were advocating for a certain cause. Now, just playing devil's advocate, now who would you more likely support, me or Mr. Horner?
Well, I think Mr. Horner's $100 says something a little louder. Is that the point you're trying to make?
Yeah, basically. So basically,
Not you personally.
now the wealthy majority, I mean not the majority, there's a wealthy minority. I mean, I believe there's a statistic saying that the small 2% own most to 90% of the wealth, some statistic like that. And basically that's the same thing for all the elections nowadays. They just get it from special interest groups, and we just really want to focus on getting the money out of there, because like I showed in the analogy, it's just they're probably going to more likely do favors for the special interest groups rather than for the public.
Okay, so you're not really advocating that. I mean, they're going to have contributions. You'd rather have them be from individuals or smaller, have more integrity there rather than a larger a special interest group that's going to have some kind of influence, potential influence on the candidate should that person get elected, right?
Well, kind of, but frankly, we really want the government to be, we want basically, I believe it's tax dollars we want to use that to all thrown into a huge pile of money, and it's then X amount of money is given to candidates, each candidate, and it's provided.
And that's it. No other contributions, right?
I believe so.
I mean, it has to be a voluntary system.
Yeah.
There's a U.S. Supreme Court argument that says you can't restrict an individual spending their own money.
Right.
But so you voluntarily would participate under this scheme that's been organized by the Democracy Matter folks and their advocates. It's basically nearly full public financing of elections. The argument is you pay for voting booths, you pay for polling places, the public pays for all those things. Why not pay for the candidates themselves so that average people would have a chance to run? It's pretty compelling.
It is, it is. Let me just step back a little bit and talk a bit more about Democracy Matters, because what you've done at Shaker, and I don't know if this is unusual, but it's an organization that was really created in the college campus situation. So you've brought this to a high school, and you're considered a fellow, right, or a high school fellow. What inspired you to do this? Just because you have this avid interest in government and how it works?
I guess you could say that.
Simply put.
Well, first off, I learned about it when I believe I mentioned before, when I was working on a congressional campaign for Kirsten Gillibrand, and basically, I looked into the website, and to be honest, I mean, something like this really motivated me, and I said, that's saying something for me. But I felt, why not get involved now? I'm last year of Shaker. I'm a senior. Why not get a head start on the college experience? I believe there's around 60 chapters around the country of colleges.
Colleges, okay.
Now I believe there's only like a couple. I think there's about seven high school chapters, and it seems something like a really good cause, and I felt that just really endearing to me, and
okay, well,
gives me something to do.
Well, I think it's great. So you did the investigation, and you found this particular organization that spoke to you, and you decided you'd find a way to carry it on to your here and now. And how are your fellow classmates, taking this on?
Well, so far, I'm working. I have to say it is kind of tough with the high school level, but I'm still hounding on everyone. I'm trying to get. I'm leaving next year, but I don't want it to dwindle as I leave. I'm working with the juniors to try to get them to focus in on just to keep it going. I believe it's something very important. I believe it's a fast and growing grassroots organization, and I feel that it's very valuable. For everyone to be involved in. So far, I have brought in, I believe the executive director, Joan Mandel, and Mr. Horner now. But I continue to plan. I plan on bringing in 2 more speakers. One to talk about global environmental issues, along with money and politics, and universal health care.
So you're a real advocate. I think this is admirable. And now, are you going to go to a school that has this chapter, or are you going to go to a school and create one?
Well, I still have a month to find out where I'm going to end up going, but there are a lot of the colleges I've applied to already have chapters, but some of them do not have chapters. And the ones that don't, I'll go for it. If I do go to a college that does not have a chapter, I think that even might influence my decision. I think that would be a great experience to do, to start a chapter at a certain college, instead of perhaps going to a school that already has a chapter.
One.
But I would still, no matter what, I would still enjoy if I even ended up at a school.
This is your pursuit. Now, Is it unusual for Shaker is actually recognized as an organization within the school framework, right? It's actually a
Yeah.
So it's recognized by the school and it gets its support.
Yeah, basically, it's sponsored by the student government. I've been a member for about 2 years now. They've been a great help organizing everything. Mrs. Morgan, the advisor, she's helped me quite a bit. So have the students and student government. They're actively involved. They do a lot of things. They help out for the Veteran War, Veterans Day celebration. Also, any teacher, I believe when teachers conference day, they all help out, and various other things. And I felt that the student government at Shaker was the best option for me to get it sponsored, get Democracy Matters sponsored, because it was just so heavily involved, and so many students are already involved in student government. So I figured, why not?
Speaking of finances, do you get any funding or support, financial support from a college chapter or from the organization? It's a large organization, right? I mean, it's not just individual to each. It comes under an umbrella, Democracy Matters, right? Do they have a funding source, and do they provide grant monies or any kind of funds for you to be able to do the work you're doing at school?
Well, unfortunately, since I'm a high school student, they've given me. I have received a few materials, but at the college level, I believe if you set up a chapter, you can get a paid internship for doing so. I believe it's about $750 per semester and a bunch of materials as well.
Okay.
So,
Blair, speaking about the Project Sunlight website and funding, how is that funded? Is it tax dollars?
It's completely paid for by you and your viewers.
Okay.
Last year in the fiscal year 07-08, there was $701,000 to pay for the hardware and the software and programmers to put this thing together. As I mentioned before, the money started to flow in April. We got it up by December 1st, which by government standards, I think is warp speed.
I do think so.
And so, but that's the funding for it. It's a government program. It's a line within the Department of Law's budget. Just mention one thing on the Democracy Matters. I don't work with Democracy Matters. Obviously, I work for the Attorney General's office, but I did work with Donald Foyle when he was helped setting this up. And Donald went to Colgate.
Right.
One of the reasons why this starts is and he is kind of his step parents are Joan Mandel and her husband, and they brought O'Donnell from the Caribbean to the United States, where he played basketball at Colgate and then went to play in the NBA. And it was his money that started it up. He actually cares about this, and I organized when I was with NYPIRG, a tour of the state for him, where we did news conferences around the state when he was first getting this thing started. And the idea, as you heard already, is to get college students and students involved in the kind of the advocacy process around clean money, clean elections. So he's a very interesting guy. It's not the kind of thing you normally hear about when you're talking about NBA stars, is that they will spend money to set up student groups to advocate for campaign finance reform. But he's a very interesting guy, and it's a great project.
Just step a little back. NYPIRG, and we know your affiliation with NYPIRG, but NYPIRG also is student.
That's right.
Based
The board
as
of
well.
directors of NYPIRG, New York Public Interest Research Group, are all college students elected from the schools that have voted to set up a NYPIRG chapter. This is, I think, 21 or 22 in New York. It might have changed in the last year. And so the students vote to set it up. They have at least one staff person on a campus, full-time staff person that's hired, a college graduate that comes to the school, is organized with the students, and anywhere from 50 to 100 to 200 students are involved in projects, some advocacy-oriented, similar to what you've heard about so far at Shaker, and sometimes educational, sometimes service-oriented, registering people to vote and things like that.
Okay. Now you've talked about citizens going to the website for Project Sunlight, but it's also useful for other groups. It mentioned specifically journalists and bloggers. Journalists, because they're looking for information for their stories, and bloggers. I mean, the blogging dynamic has really taken off incredibly, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a kind of, I'm a relatively old guy, so the blogosphere is kind of a new thing for me too. But It's the way that the public is going to increasingly get its information. I mean, even I have, at my advanced age of 53, a Facebook account now. And so, I mean, this is the way that people communicate. I was talking to one college student recently who says that she doesn't even email anymore because that would be like in the old days, instead of calling someone on the phone, you wrote them a note. For them, it's instant messaging, text messaging, writing on the wall of the Facebook. It's even the kinds of things that I have gotten used to, email, are now increasingly becoming out of date. So this is the way people are going to get information, particularly young people. And so I think government has to respond. Government can't just put out press releases, can't just put information up on a website. I think government has to be more creative. The public will get more engaged if they understand how things work. And the internet provides a way you could never do that in the past. I mean, in the past, if we did what we were trying to do, it would have taken us years to put it together. And you would have had to spend more than $700,000 because you would have had to have people key punching the information onto cards that you slid into some gigantic computer to make a tape. You don't even have to do that anymore. And this information was done within about 7 months, out the door, it's on the web. Now, it's for average citizens, but there's enough on it that I think high-end users, academicians, researchers, journalists, bloggers, whatever, can use the information for whatever it is that they're interested in doing. The more eyeballs that are on state government, the better state government will be. And that's the message behind Project Sunlight. And we hope it serves as a model for other agencies that have databases on healthcare or the environment. How can they put their data out to be useful to people in a way that if they're interested in what kind of emissions are there in my zip code and things like that.
Right. One of the things that I think as I was looking at the site itself, and I know we're going to show examples of what things look like, we've done that throughout the program here, was this whole concept of, I'm going to call it late breaking, but keeping people up to date as things happen as much as possible. Now, would you rely on the bloggers to do that, or as far as pulling all this stuff together, or is there another team that does something like that?
Well, in terms of us keeping the site fresh, it's our team. We just do it. I mean, we're not trying to replace the databases that already exist. I mean, you can get the campaign finance database and look at it by going to the Board of Elections website. Our service is to put together a website that offers the connective tissue between various databases. So our site right now is going to be updated on a quarterly basis. Probably will go as frequently as every 2 months, because every 2 months lobbyists have to file.
Okay.
And that is the backbone of the data.
Okay.
The lobbyists report the bills they work on, and that becomes the connection between lawmakers, bills that get introduced, interest groups, and all of the other pieces of the website.
Okay, we're close to the end of the program, and I just wanted to recap some stuff. Is there anything that we didn't talk about when we had our conversation today that you thought we should have? Either one of you.
I don't think so. I mean, the one thing for your make a plug. I mean, for your viewers, they should take a look at the site. If they like it, let us know, and let their lawmakers know, because Project Sunlight is only a one-year project funded in the state budget. For it to continue, it has to have continued support. The governor has introduced a budget that includes funding for Project Sunlight. As far as I can tell, both houses of the legislature are comfortable with it, but you never know. It is Albany. And so if people think it's a good thing, let their lawmakers know. If they want to make suggestions on how we can make our site better, there's an option on the website where they can contact us and email whatever their thoughts are, because we're trying to improve the site based on the feedback we're getting from the public.
Now, legislators, I mean, there probably would have been a certain amount of discomfort as a result of all this. So it really keeps people on their toes, and that's probably part of the purpose.
Well, when the Attorney General first proposed the project and hired me, who, lawmakers had some concern about that, given my history, there was an effort in the beginning as to whether or not they really wanted to fund it at all. But I think now that lawmakers have seen the product, we got it out the door very quickly. It's very useful. It's not a gotcha website. It's really just about information. I think they're much more comfortable with it than they were when it was purely concept and the NIPER guy was coming to run it. So I think that they're more comfortable with it. Again, I don't anticipate there being any problems with it. But again, the public should take a look. Let us know how we can improve it. Let lawmakers know if they like it.
Now here we're letting our viewers know about this today, and I venture to guess that there are people who don't know, have not heard about this before. I mean, there was a press release and an announcement and all that. I mean, how are you going about getting this information out to people?
Well, there's no money in the budget for advertising. So I come to places like this, in fact, to promote it. Or I speak at Shaker High School. And I've run around to editorial boards, and we've constantly promoted it. We're doing some work with the New York Press Association in a couple weeks. We're going to hopefully try to get links done on all of their websites. So there's kind of the free media approach to this. We're hoping to integrate it into high school and collegiate state governmental programs.
Okay.
So participation in government class in a high school, for example, might find this useful. We're trying to get groups to use it, trying to get researchers to use it, academicians, reporters. We think that when people use it, they'll like it, and then they'll keep it going. But we don't have any advertising budget. And since I'm Scottish, I'm pinching the pennies to make sure all of it is going into improving the program, not unnecessarily promoting it. So right now I just drive around the state. I'm kind of the Johnny Appleseed of Project Sunlight.
You'll speak wherever you're asked.
That's right. That's right.
And it's relatively young. You are growing, you're building it, and so this is part of the process now to get the word out to more people.
We unveiled it on December 4th, 2007. We just did an upgrade on the site last week, and so we are doing everything we can to make it as good as possible, driven again by what the public tells us they want the site to look like.
Okay.
It's not about us telling them. We wanted to get something out so people could give us feedback. We're calling it Sunlight 1.0. And to have a 2.0 version, we want to have the public tell us what they want to see on the site.
Great, great. Now, Jim, Democracy Matters also has a website. I looked at that, and it looks like it has a lot of information on that. They come out with a, I'm going to call it an e-newsletter, so people can go to that website and check it out as well. Anything else that the organization does? I mean, besides the chapter work, and it has a website. There's a publishing arm of it as well, I think, putting out pamphlets or booklets about government and how it works. So that's something that I think people should take a look at anyway, and see how they can tie the two things together.
Well, actually, recently, and in Albany, I believe about a couple weeks ago, this was quite interesting. I attended the Democracy Matters Summit right in Albany. It was basically taught us more about the main issues, campaign finance and clean elections. It taught us good ways to present ourselves to basically to our schools, good ways to get the message out, basically that, and what else? But the website provides a lot of information. I know that
it's really loaded.
Yeah, very. Jay Mandel, he's got a portion of the website called Money on My Mind. He writes all these articles about various issues. He ties it all into Democracy Matters and its view.
Well, certainly, the whole topic is coming, up now. We're having a big national election, and there's huge amounts of money. I mean, extraordinary amounts, and the phenomenal use of the internet for people to collect money in one fell swoop. And we have, and I'm not going to name a candidate, but we have candidates who are saying basically they're going to adhere to a certain standard. I think after you become the nominee, then you have access to a certain amount of government money. And I guess the challenge is, like you were proposing with the controlled amount of money, is saying, I'm only going to stick with that amount of money.
That's right.
In this strong media-driven world, thinking that people need to be bombarded constantly with the same message, which rather than cut it down a bit, I'm sure that's an extraordinary challenge. But with a pressure like this from the grassroots, more and more people hopefully will say, hold it, we just don't want this any longer. Do you actually hope that this is going to be achieved?
Well, it's fast growing on college campuses, and I guess we're as well. This is what I've been told, that we're the future. So, and Democracy Matters plans to just create a new wave of reform people who have got reform in their mind, and I guess we hope for the best in the future.
Obviously, you wouldn't be doing it if you didn't believe that, would you? Listen, thank you both for once again for agreeing to come on the show and speak with me today and let our public know all about Project Sunlight and Democracy Matters. And I hope we get a chance to chat again sometime.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me on Getting to Know You. I hope you enjoyed today's program and will join us next time. Until then, have a good one.